Assalamu alaikum, Uncle Iqbal.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Good.
I'll be better as soon as I can find a murshid.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Syed Rizvi.
Alaikum salam.
How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
Welcome. We'll get started in about 5 minutes, inshallah.
Oh, okay.
Faisal, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. This is New Year.
Zainab, assalamu alaikum. Islam, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Are you this on the Zoom already?
Sorry, one more time?
Are you this on the Zoom?
Yeah, it's on Zoom and on YouTube as well.
Right. Assalamu alaikum, Syed.
Alaikum salam. Yeah.
How is Toronto right now?
Ah,
How is Toronto right now, Syed?
Toronto, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
You still have snow on the ground?
Yeah. We still have it, yeah.
So when did your dad go to Africa?
Your voice is not coming that easy.
Hasnain, your mic is a little bit
Is it off?
garbled. No, it's just a little bit garbled. It's not that clear.
Okay. So I'm gonna get the headset.
Okay. Faisal, are you out there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you, Uncle?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good.
Good. All right, I'm going to give you presenter rights soon, and then we can kick off with Yasin,
Okay.
inshallah. Abbas Ali will be reciting, okay?
Then I have to go. So look at that. Oh, look.
Assalamu alaikum, Basili.
Walaikum assalam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Alhamdulillah.
We'll get started in about 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Faisal, you can go ahead and take screen share rights and bring up Surah Yasin.
Okay, let me. You can see my screen, yeah?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Then I'd like to do a quick sound check.
Yes, much better.
Thank you. I'm going to go on mute then.
No problem. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're here today to commemorate the Shahadat of Bibi Zainab alayhi salam. May Allah grant us the opportunity to perform her ziyarat in the near future, inshallah. Tonight's program, inshallah, we'll start with Surah Yasin, recited by Abbas Ali Fazal, followed by Marcia. Then we'll go into our lecture with our guest speaker, Syed Muhammad Rizvi from Toronto. We'll then conclude with Noha, and then inshallah with Ziyarat. And then inshallah at 9 p.m. We will commence our annual general meeting, inshallah. So with that, Abbas Ali, if you're ready, Bismillah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yasin wal Qur'anil Hakim. Innaka laminal mursalin ala siratin mustaqim. Tanzil al-Adid ar-Rahim. لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون والسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع ذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثل أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فأززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم وإن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولا يمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة الرجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي الضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآيات لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق أزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآيات لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا شمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا ليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآيات لهم أن حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نخرجهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في الضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في الظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا يوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون فاتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي الرميم قل يحيي الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من شجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على
اللهم صل
محمد
على محمد. سورة مباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله.
صلوا على النبي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
ایک دن تھا کہ چادر میرے سر سے گری تھی سورج بھی نہ نکلا سر ننگے پھرا ہے مجھے آج کمینہ برباد ہوئی ایک دن تھا کہ اس شہر کی کرتی تھی میں شاہی اور آج تباہی بے غسل پڑا مہر نبوت کا نگینہ برباد ہوئی یہ نیل تماچو میرے منہ پہ پڑے ہیں میں کس کو دکھاؤں نیزے کے تلے بیٹھ کے روتی ہے سکینہ برباد ہوئی کانوں کو میرے چیر کے دھلے گیا ظالم میں رہ گئی روتی یہ چاند سا چہرہ نہیں دیکھے گی سکینہ برباد ہوئی قاسم نہیں اکبر نہیں عباس نہیں ہے عابد ہے تو بھی ये कैसा पड़ा मुझ पे मुहर रम का महीना बर्बाद हुई मैं आबाद हुई कर्बो बला उजरा मदीना बर्बाद हुई चलो नबी
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajum. Before I turn it to Syed Rizvi, just a brief introduction. So we're really honored to have Syed Muhammad Rizvi gracing us this evening from Toronto. He is born in India, raised in Tanzania, and presently resides in Canada. He has completed his Islamic studies at the Hawza Ilmiya at the Islamic Seminary. He completed his master's in history in Vancouver. He has authored and translated more than 15 publications over the course of several years, and the translation of the Quran in 6 volumes. He has written many articles on various Islamic topics in English, Urdu, and Arabic, and he has been a renowned speaker across Canada, the US, and many other countries around the world. So let us welcome Syed Muhammad Rizvi with your loudest of salawat. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل
على محمد وآل محمد.
واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: ثم كان عاقبة الذين أساءوا السوء أن كذبوا بآيات الله وكانوا بها يستهزئون. We've gathered to commemorate the wafat of Bibi Zainab salawatullah alayha. Zainab is the grandson of the Prophet of Islam, the daughter of Ali and Fatima, the sister of Hassan and Hussein. She was born in a holy environment, raised in the laps of infallible parents, and so it's not a surprise to see that Zainab reached to a level of wisdom and righteousness that the Shia scholars describe her as mahfuzatun anil khata, which means she is protected from error. We don't use the term ma'suma for her because we need a clear confirmation in Quran and a hadith of the prophets about it. But nonetheless, she is also recognized by our ulama as mahfuzatun anil khata because of that high spiritual level that she has gained. The most important event in the life of Bibi Zainab is, of course, the tragedy of Karbala, a movement whose first stage was led by Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and Zainab led its second stage. And especially in the post-Karbala events, the sermons of Zainab are very significant, especially the sermon that she gave in the court of Yazid in Damascus. I would like to take this opportunity tonight to actually present to you and explain to you the importance and far-reaching impact of the sermon of Bibi Zainab in the court of Yazid. And to understand that in a full context, it is necessary to know the history of Sham and the Umayyad political strategies. It is only in that background you can understand the great contribution and role played by Zainab in this movement of Hussein ibn Ali, in making sure that the voice of Hussein is not buried in his grave in Karbala. Rather, it actually echoes all over the world, even after so many centuries. What I would like to do is actually talk about the historical background of the area known as Sham in history, and the role of the family of Abu Sufyan. And I will be relying on the information that, mashallah, our community, the children go to madrasa and they learn about history. But it's important to understand the context in which the events of Karbala took place. The Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, passed away in the 11th year of the Hijrah. And by that time, Islam was confined to the Arabian Peninsula. It was only later on, with the conquest undertaken by the Khulafa, that the Muslim empire expanded to include the areas known as Sham, Egypt, Iraq, and Persia. Now, when we use the term Sham, normally people relate that as the present-day Syria, which is not actually a true understanding of it. When the term Sham or Asham is used in history, from the early days till actually till the end of the First World War, the border of that area known as Sham included Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and the entire land of Palestine. So this vast area of the Middle East is collectively known as, Asham. Sometimes actually historians even use that in a plural form, and they say Ashamat. So in English, we would translate that as the Greater Syria. So even Jerusalem, for example, till the First World War, was part of what is known as Syria. During the reign of the first Khalifa, he actually dispatched 3 armies to conquer Sham. One was sent under the command of Amr ibn As towards Palestine. Another went under the command of Abu Ubaid al-Jarrah towards Hims. And a third army went under the command of Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, the eldest son of Abu Sufyan, towards Damascus. Don't confuse. There is one Yazid who is son of Muawiyah, and there is one Yazid, the older brother of Muawiyah. So this is Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, who is given the command of the army which went to conquer the city of Damascus. And Yazid bin Abi Sufyan was appointed in the 13th year of the Hijrah by the first Caliph as the governor of Damascus. Now, there is a long story. I don't want to go into it that, what happened. Because Abu Sufyan was not in the same camp after the passing away of the Prophet. What happened? What conspired that now his sons are now in the same camp as the first Khalifa? Not only Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, at the same time, his younger brother Muawiyah was made the governor of Jordan. Later on, during the reign of the second Khalifa, who did not only maintain the ranks of the sons of Abu Sufyan, but he actually promoted them. In the 18th year of the Hijrah, Yazid bin Abi Sufyan and some senior officers in Sham died because of a pandemic. And upon the death of Yazid bin Abi Sufyan, the second caliph now appointed Muawiyah to the governorship of the city of Damascus, as well as Jordan. And by the time of the Khilafat of the third Khalifa, Muawiyah is promoted as the governor general of the entire area of Sham, covering Syria, present day, and Lebanon and Jordan and Palestine. So with this historical survey, it's important to realize how this area known as Sham came under the control of the Muslims and at what time. Basically, three points become very clear with this historical, background that I presented to you. Number one, Sham during the life of the Prophet was part of the Eastern Roman Empire, and it was mostly Christian territory. There were no Muslims in that area. The second point, from the first day of its conquest, whatever the people of Sham came to know of Islam was mostly through the lenses of the family of Abu Sufyan. Neither had the people of Sham visited the Prophet, nor had they seen the people of Medina. Their only source of understanding Islamic ideals and values was Banu Umayyah, especially the family of Abu Sufyan. And this is where we come to realize that even long before Amir al-Mu'mineen is accepted as the Khalifa after Osman, there is a period of 20 to 22 years where Muawiyah was able to brainwash the people of Sham, and he established Sham as his power base. And it was on basis of that power base that he decided to oppose Amir al-Mu'mineen and even planned to fight against him in the battle known as Siffin. And this is where we come to realize that, in that 20 to 22 years, the way he brainwashed the people of Sham, he also projected a very negative image of Imam Ali alayhi salam in the minds of the people of Sham, to the extent that when the news of Imam Ali's Shahadat and assassination inside the Grand Mosque of Kufa reached to Sham, they started asking one another, what was Ali doing in the mosque? Means in their mind, Ali and Masjid could not coexist together. That was how he had basically, tarnished the image of Amir al-Mu'mineen and his family in the eyes of the people, the new converts in Sham who never knew anything about the Prophet or his family. And finally, in the year 40 after Hijrah, after the peace treaty signed with our second Imam, Muawiyah now becomes the absolute ruler of the Muslim world. Now that we have reached to this point in history, let me, briefly talk about the political strategy of Muawiyah. It's in the light of that we will be able to understand why Hussein ibn Ali did what he did, and what was the role of Bibi Zainab in basically the counterattack against the strategy of Banu Umayyah. Let's hear salawat, please. You see, the Umayyad government established by Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan in Sham was basically founded on two opposite strategies. One is propaganda, and the other is military might. And both strategies were used with wicked shrewdness by Muawiyah. Number one, the domination over Sham was maintained by propaganda. He didn't have to resort to military might because these people were new Muslims, and it was him and his family who taught them Islam according to their own liking. Number two, the domination of all other regions other than Sham. You look at Hijaz, Iraq, Yemen, Persia, and Egypt. The domination in all these other regions was maintained by military might. So you have propaganda as the tool in Sham, and then you have the military might in other regions of the Muslim world: Hijaz, Iraq, Yemen, Persia, and Egypt. For a better understanding of this political strategy of Muawiyah, let me give you an example of the political strategy of the present United States of America. Don't feel bad about it. I know this is the American audience, but realities are there. We have to understand, we have to study, make comparison, look at present and the past and see whether there is something similar. America's strategy in dealing with its own country and the other countries will help us understand the mindset and the strategy of Muawiyah. When it comes to the domestic policy of the United States of America, it is based on liberal democratic system in which the public opinion is respected. Media, of course, becomes a pivotal role in forming the public opinion, and therefore whatever party can mold the public opinion gets the majority votes. So for example, even a president like Nixon can be removed from the office. So when it comes to the domestic policy, United States of America lives by the liberal democratic system. There is no force, it is the people's opinion which counts. So whoever can, manage the media, they will be the one who would succeed. But when it comes to the foreign policy of the United States of America, the same democratic America, when pursuing its own interest globally, very readily ignores the public opinion of other nations and uses its military might directly or through local dictators to impose its own will for its own interest, even if those interests are against that region or that country or that nation. So keeping these two different policies of America in mind, I apply that to Muawiyah's strategy. He maintained power within the country, and that is, Sham, on basis of propaganda. And he maintained power outside the country, outside Sham, in Iraq, Hijaz, Yemen, Persia, and Egypt, on basis of the military might of Sham. And just to give you one example, and this is not the place for me to give you quotations of more of the references, you can actually refer to the book I have on this topic, which is, you can even download that from a website. If you send me an email, I'll give you the link. Anyway, Muawiyah, in his advice to his son Yazid, one of the things is he told him that whenever you see there is uprising in other regions of the empire, you may indeed use the Shami military might. But remember, once you have quelled the rebellion in that region, you must bring the Shami forces back to their country. Why? And this is a quotation directly from history, because if they stay longer in other countries, their behavior will change. My brothers and sisters, when Muawiyah is using this term behavioral change, actually he's referring to the broadening of the minds and the exposure of the Shami army to the real image of the family of Abu Sufyan and its continuous opposition to the Prophet of Islam until it was finally subdued in the conquest of Mecca. Because Muawiyah had projected himself to be a relative of Rasulullah among the people of Sham. And he had projected Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali bin Abi Talib as the enemy of Rasulullah. So Muawiyah didn't want the Shami, shoulders, army to interact with the people from Hijaz and Iraq or Misr or or Yemen, because if they mingle with them, they will find out that what we have been told about Ali Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah is not really the true information. And so this is where we come to realize that it was in this background that Imam Hussein bin Ali alayhi salam analyzed the Muslim world during his time. And he saw that the Ummah was suffering from two problems. And this is where I'm coming to connect with Bibi Zainab. According to the analysis of Imam Hussein ibn Ali, the Ummah was suffering from two problems. Number one, inside Sham, the Muslims suffered from ignorance and misinformation fed to them by Banu Umayyah, Muawiyah and his family. And the second problem, which was outside Sham, in Hijaz, Iraq, Persia, Yemen, and Egypt, the Muslims suffered from apathy and a slumbering conscience It was not ignorance or misinformation. They knew the reality, but they had this apathy. They didn't have the courage to stand up, and their conscience was slowly, dying out. Two different social ills analyzed by Hussein ibn Ali required two different solutions. Outside Sham, the Ummah needed awakening, somebody who can awaken their slumbering conscience. Inside Sham, the Ummah required awareness. So awakening in majority of the Muslim empire, awareness in Sham. And so you have two strategies, two problems, two solutions. For revival and awakening the slumbering conscience of the Ummah, Hussein bin Ali chose the path of martyrdom and sacrifice. Imam decided that I'll give such a great sacrifice that even the most indifferent person in the Muslim Ummah will be forced to think about it. Why this happened? Why was the grandson of the Prophet killed in Karbala? And this will awaken their slumbering conscience. And then we come to the second solution for creating awareness among the people of Sham and dispelling the misinformation from them. Hussein bin Ali needed the help of the women of his family who would fulfill that task when taken as prisoners to Sham. Hussein took the responsibility of awakening the slumbering conscience of the Ummah, while Zainab took the responsibility of creating awareness among the people of Sham. And that is why, my brothers and sisters, Zainab is known as Sharikatul Hussein, the partner of Hussein. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
I hope you are with me in understanding this role of Zainab with Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The summary of this analysis that I presented to you is that Muawiyah had built an iron curtain around Sham. I'm using this term iron curtain, which was used during the time when Soviet Union was still there. And, it was kind of a iron curtain symbolically built around Soviet Union, which blocked any idea from reaching its people. And so Muawiyah had, in a way, by his propaganda and brainwashing the people of Sham, he had created this iron curtain which blocked any idea from reaching the people. And their minds remained intoxicated with Umayyad propaganda. And this wall of propaganda was so strong. And I would like you to pay attention to these remarks that I have. This wall of propaganda was so strong that neither Ali's sword could bring it down, nor could Imam Hassan's piece make a crack in that wall, and even Hussein's innocent blood could not dampen its foundation. Yes, that wall came crumbling down with the sermons of Bibi Zainab and Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. That is the great impact of Zainab in this movement of Hussein ibn Ali, that she was able to actually penetrate that wall and open the minds of the people of Sham who had been brainwashed for decades by Muawiyah and Ali Abi Sufyan. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum.
It is in this context that you had to read the sermon of Bibi Zainab. And I don't have the time really to go through it, in an entirety. Let me just present to you some of the selected parts of that sermon, just to give you the impact of what Zainab was able to achieve, which could not be done by Ali or Hassan or Hussein. Just think about the atmosphere of Yazid court, filled with senior officials, dignitaries of Sham, the elite, ambassadors, some ambassadors of the foreign governments, and religious leaders of other faiths. It was in that setting that the family of Imam Hussein was brought in as prisoners without any veil or scarves. A herald was constantly announcing in the bazaar as well as in the imperial court that the head of a descendant is being brought who had rebelled against the Khalifa. And that was the blessed head of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, which was presented to Yazid in a silver plate and placed in front of his throne. Yazid was looking around. For him, this was the victory march in a way. He became so arrogant, started poking his cane, used it to poke the blessed head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and expressing his joy, in which he started reciting lines of a blasphemous, poetry of a mushrik of the early days of Islam, where it says, لَعِبَتْ حَاشِمٌ بِالْمُلْكِ فَلَا خَبَرٌ جَاءَ وَلَا وَحْيٌ نَزَلَ. That Banu Hashim, referring to the Prophet, that stage a drama for domination. For there was no divine news from up, nor any revelation which came down. So now he is openly, by reciting this poetry of someone else, a mushrik, he is denying the wahi and the Quran and the nubuwwat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This display of arrogance and blasphemy prompted Bibi Zainab to stand up and address him in the court filled with the elite of Sham. The aura of her personality, even as a prisoner, and the eloquence of her speech was so powerful that Yazid, being the king and the emperor of the time, could not do anything to prevent her from speaking. The daughter of Ali did not stand up and ask for permission to speak. She stood up and started addressing Yazid. I'm leaving the preamble of her khutbah. Look at the first words she uses to address Yazid. She says, Yabna al-Talaqa. This word in Arabic, Yabna al-Talaqa, means the son of the freed slave. Just think about it. In the imperial court of Yazid, right in the presence of the elite and the government officials of Sham, Zainab is exposing the family background of Yazid. When she uses the word Yabna al-Talaqa, the son of the freed slave, she was actually referring to the conquest of Mecca in 8th year of the Hijrah, where after seeing the strength of the Muslim army, Yazid's grandfather, Abu Sufyan, and his family converted to Islam. If Zainab's grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, had wished, because the city of Mecca was conquered without any war, if Rasulullah, the grandfather of Zainab, had wished, he could have made the people of Mecca, including Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah and his family, as his personal slaves. But what did the Prophet do? He manifested his benevolence and his mercy. He was, after all, Rahmatun lil Alameen. And he let the people of Mecca go free. He says, you go away. وَأَنْتُمُ الطَّلَقَاء. Go, you are free. Talaqa means free slaves. I could have made you slaves, but I'm letting you go. And this is where Zainab is reminding Yazid that you are actually the son of a freed slave of my grandfather. With such an exposure, the people of Sham, for the first time, they heard that Yazid's grandparents and father embraced Islam in the latter years of the Prophet's life, and that they were actually Prophet's freed slaves. They were not relatives of Rasulullah. The way they have projected this title for Muawiyah, Khal al-Mu'mineen, the uncle of the believers, based on the relationship that one of the daughters of Abu Sufyan was, married to Rasulullah, and so he becomes the brother-in-law of Rasulullah, and so he is the uncle of the believers. The amazing thing is that Rasulullah has so many other brothers-in-law, Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, Abdullah bin Umar, and others. None of them is known as Khal al-Mu'mineen by the historians. It is only Muawiyah who has this unique title. And so all these were tools used by Muawiyah to project himself as a relative of Rasulullah, and to project that, Nawudhu Billah, Ali and Ali's family were enemies of Rasulullah. So Zainab there, by using that term, not saying Yazid, not saying you are the Khalifa, or the Amir, by using the term Yabna Talaqa, she basically shattered this entire, persona that they have created for themselves as people coming from very noble family related to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
And then she actually talks about the further background and even the upbringing of Yazid and Muawiyah, where she says, there is neither anything unusual about you, nor any surprise in your actions. How can there be any hope of consideration from a child of a person whose mouth spat the liver of the righteous ones, and whose flesh grew upon the blood of the martyrs? Zainab is actually summarizing the history there, presenting that to the people of the Sham who had never heard these things before. She is actually presenting the psychological or behavior profile of Yazid by saying that I don't expect anything from him, any good from him, because what would you expect? Justice or fairness from somebody who is influenced by his grandmother Hind, the ruthless and immoral person. And she was actually referring to the Battle of Uhud, when Yazid's grandmother ordered her slave to cut open the abdomen of Hamza, the Prophet's uncle, after he had been killed, and to take out his liver, and she tried to chew on it. What we see ISIS doing today is nothing new. These are the remnants, and I would call them the illegitimate children of Banu Umayyah, doing the same things that Hind had done, the grandmother of Yazid, in Syria, in the same area that ISIS came to power temporarily. And this is where she is known as Akilatul Akbad, the liver eater. And this is where Zainab actually says this is the background, and this is the character of the grandmother of Yazid. And eventually she comes to a point where she says, you think you have actually destroyed us? No. A point comes where Zainab says, you will surely be presented to the Messenger of Allah with your crime of spilling the blood of his descendants and your act of violating the sanctity of his family and relatives. She's so powerful. She is saying that, you are responsible for this crime of spilling the blood of the descendants of Rasulullah, violating the sanctity and hurmat of his family by bringing these women of the family as prisoners in this way in your court. And so all pretense of Muawiyah and Yazid being part of Rasulullah's family is now going. And then she says, it suffices for you to know that on the day of judgment, Allah will be the judge, and the Messenger of Allah will be the plaintiff against you. He will lodge the complaint against you, and Jibreel, the archangel, will be the witness for Rasulullah. Not only that, Zainab was so courageous at that time that she also refers to those who had come before Yazid. She says, those who facilitated the government for you and imposed you on the necks, on the backs of the Muslims, will soon know how evil the recompense of the transgressors shall be, and who among you will be in the worst place and the most misguided. And this is where we see that, Zainab, by her khutbah, basically totally, destroyed this facade, created by Muawiyah and Ali Abu Sufyan about themselves being relatives of Rasulullah, close to Rasulullah. We are the ones who represent Islam, and projecting Ali bin Abi Talib and his family as the enemies of Rasulullah. And so at the end of this khutbah, Zainab comes up with a challenge to Yazid. And she says, oh Yazid, plan your stratagem. Strive to your maximum. Whatever forces you have, resources, put your best efforts. But by Allah, neither will you be able to erase our memory from the people's hearts and minds, nor can you destroy our revelation, nor can you reach our heights, and your shame for killing my brother Hussein cannot be washed out. This is where we come to realize, number one, she says that you will never be able to erase our memory from the hearts of the Muslims. You will not be able to destroy our revelation. When she uses this word, our revelation, she's responding to this poetry of Yazid, where he denied that there was no news from Allah, no revelation. This Quran is ours. It came in our family. You will not be able to destroy that, and you will never be able to attain our status. And your shame for killing Hussein will never be washed away. The impact was so powerful that Yazid became afraid, and he called one of the scholars, hired ones by the darbar, by the court, and asked him to go on the minbar and badmouth Ali and Ali. And that's where you see, as the story continues later on, that Imam Zainul Abidin then stood up and he said to Yazid that if you even have a iota of justice in you, you will let me respond to this speaker that you have. And Imam Zainul Abidin then came with the insistence of the people. They told Yazid, we would like to listen to him. And this is where Imam Zainul Abidin gave his sermon. So the ground was prepared by Zainab. And when you put these two sermons together, let me, give you my take on this issue, that the sermon of Zainab did tabarra, and the sermon of Imam Sajjad did tawalla. Zainab exposed the true face of Banu Umayyah, and Imam Sajjad presented Ahlul Bayt in the true form to the people of Syria. The last statement that Bibi Zainab had, where she says, Wallahi la tamhu dhikruna wa la tumitu wahyuna, that by Allah you will never erase our memory from the hearts and minds of the people. She uses the words Wallah, by Allah. She was so much assured of that, because this was a deal between Zainab and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was the deal? The deal was that, oh Allah, I have maintained your zikr. I have remembered you at all moments of my life. And in return, Allah will remember Zainab forever. You look at the world at the moment. You go to all corners of the world. 14 centuries after the events of Karbala, you will see there are centers dedicated in the name of Zainab salawatullah alayha. Not only that, it's amazing. This is one lady who has two shrines, one in Cairo, one in the suburb of Damascus, Zainabiyah. We leave aside the dispute among the historians and scholars whether one is authentic or the other. The point is that even the shrine attributed to Bibi Zainab in Cairo is visited mostly by the Sunnis, and it is packed. People go for their hajat. They consider that place to be sacred. Zainab is the wasila for their acceptance of their du'as with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You go to Damascus, the shrine there is visited mostly by the Shias. And so this is the barakat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given to Zainab, and this zikr and memory of Zainab will continue because she maintained the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. You know, when I read this, when I look at the life of Zainab, when we talk about the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, my brothers and sisters, it's not easy when we are going through very difficult times to even fulfill your duties. Just think about Zainab. It is the day of Ashura. In one day, she loses 18 members of her family who are killed brutally. Not only that, the brother, the children, the nephews, the cousins. At the end of the day, what did she see? She was witness when the body of her brother was trampled with horses. She was there, became victim of this Yazidi army when they started looting the tents of the family of Hussein. They took away their jewelry. Then they, started burning the tents. After going through all this, when we come to that night known as Sham-e Ghariban for us, the eve of 11th Muharram, if these ladies would have, if they could perform their wajib namaz of Maghrib and Isha, I would really salute them under that circumstances. But Zainab did not only do that. I have the testimony from Imam SIIJLA alayhi salam, a Ma'soom witness who says that even on that eve of 11th Muharram, after the day of Ashura passed away, my aunt Zainab did not forget her namaz al-shab. This was the level of maintaining the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a lady that when Imam Syed alayhi salam came for the last farewell to his family members in the tents, while leaving, he turns to his sister and she says, Ya ukhta la tansani fi salat al-layl. Oh, my sister, don't forget me in your namaz al-shab. Who is this? This is the Ma'soom Imam, who is Sayyid al-Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. He is making that request to Zainab. This shows the level and the greatness of Zainab and her zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a narration where we are told that when this caravan was taken from Kufa to Damascus, there was a time when Imam Zainul Abidin one day observed his aunt that she is doing her prayers in a sitting position. He was concerned for her. Goes close by and he says, my aunt, what has happened? And she says, oh, my son, the bread that they give to us, the prisoners, is not enough for everyone. So most of my bread I distribute among the children. And now I became so weak that I could not even stand up to do the prayers normally. But yes, she did it. And because she maintained that zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised her that I will make sure that your memory stays forever in the minds of the mu'mineen and the Muslimin. Let me end with one statement. When I read this sermon of Bibi Zainab, in the books, when I look at the words, I feel like, Zainab was delivering this sermon with passion and courage. And she must have been very forceful and powerful in her presentation. But there is one statement, one passage, when I look at it, it makes me cry. And I think that Zainab at that time was also crying when she uttered these words. And this is where, going back to those words, Yabna talaqa, amin al-adl. Oh, this son of the freed slave, is it just that you cover your women and your slave girls with veils and curtain, while you parade the daughters of Allah's messenger as prisoners? You have torn their apparel coverings, exposed their faces, and the enemies ushered them from one city to another, one bazaar to another, and one court to another. I will just say one thing, that there was a moment when Fatima Zahra went and gave her sermon in Medina. And there was this another day when Zainab was giving her sermon in the Darbar of Yazid. Both were fulfilling their own duty and their role in a very powerful manner. But I will say to Fatima Zahra, there was one difference, Fatima. When you went to the masjid to give your khutbah about Fadak, about your right and the right of Ali, there was a curtain drawn there out of respect for you. You were on one side of the curtain, the men were on the other side. But when your daughter Zainab was giving the khutbah, she was there without any veil, without any curtain. And sure, when she was giving the khutbah, she noticed that there was a curtain erected in one of the corners of the court of Yazid, where his women and slave girls were sitting behind the curtain. That's where she says, Yabna talaqa amin al-adl, O the son of the freed slave, is this justice, that your women and slave girls be behind the curtain while the daughters of Rasulullah are exposed here and paraded as prisoners? ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our humble service for the cause of His deen and the path of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bihaqqi Zainab give us the courage to carry on the message the way she carried on after the martyrdom of Hussein ibn Ali, the message of justice and fairness for all people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the name of Zainab, protect all humanity against the negative impact of the coronavirus. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings on the Muslim Ummah, create this harmony and unity among them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the Shias of Ali, especially those who are becoming targets of the Salafi, Wahhabi extremists. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eliminate all the resources of these takfiri elements wherever they are. May Allah hasten the appearance of the Imam of the time. Ajal Allah ta'ala faraj sharif. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you so much, Syed Rizvi. Really appreciate that lecture. And inshallah, may Allah grant you the infinite wisdom and life, inshallah, to continue your service. Ahsan. Bismillah.
Thank you, Syed. What a wonderful lecture. May Allah take all of us to Bibi Sayyida Zainab's Rosa one more time if you've not been there. Bar Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. I'll ask everybody to recite and respond with me in this Nauha at your house. Please join me. کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، لٹ گیا سب گھر، لٹ گیا سب گھر، قتل حسینہ ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، لیلا کی امید اکبر کی جوانی، لیلا کی امید اکبر کی جوانی، ہو گئی برباد ہے لیلا کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، سینے پہ نیزا اکبر کو لگا تھا، سینے پہ نیزا اکبر کو لگا تھا، روتی تھی ماں اس کی جوانی کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، دیکھیے ستم بابا یا علی میں کہ دیکھیے ستم بابا یا علی، مصیبت میں ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، بیبیوں کے سر پر نہیں چادر، بیبیوں کے سر پر نہیں چادر، آؤ مدد کے لیے بابا کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، تیروں پہ اصغر نیزے پہ اکبر، تیروں پہ اصغر نیزوں پہ اکبر، فاطمہ کی لٹی کمائی کرب و بلا میں، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، کہتی تھی زینب ہائے حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، لٹ گیا سب گھر قتل حسینہ، لٹ گیا سب گھر قتل حسینہ، ہو گئی برباد ہے زینب کرب و بلا میں، بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal farajahum. Thank you, Hasnain. All right, before we conclude the ziyarat, inshallah, just a couple of quick announcements. So right after the program, we'll take a 5 to 10-minute break just to assemble ourselves for the annual general meeting and to establish quorum. We will get going with that. And our next program, inshallah, will be on Monday, March 8th, where we will be commemorating the Shahadat of Imam Musa Kazim alayhi salam and Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salam. The program will start at 8 p.m. And then also following that, our following program will be on Wednesday, March 10th, which will be Mi'raj. We will be performing the Amal on the eve of the 27th, inshallah, and that'll be led by Brother Amin Dala, inshallah. So with that, there's a request for Dua Shafa. And also let's recite Dua Shafa for those in our community as well and around the world. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amman yujibu al-mustarra iza da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. 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 Let's also recite Surah Fatiha for all the marhumeens and our families. Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Faisal, if you're out there, you can start with Ziyarat.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك يا علي زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد باقر، السلام عليك يا جعفر الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى الكاظم، السلام عليك يا علي الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد تقي، السلام عليك يا علي النقي، السلام عليك يا حسن عسكري ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان الأمان الأمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله لك ما وعدك من الناس وظهور الأمر ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Yeah, Faiz.
Faiz, are you out there?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma kulli waliyaka Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala abai fi hadhihi as-saa wa fi kulli saa waliyan wa hafiza wa qaidan wa nasira wa dalilan wa aina hatta tazkinahu arzaka taw'an wa tamatayahu fiha tawilan برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Great job, Faiz, mashallah. Thank you. All right, Mubin, that concludes our program for this evening. So once again, we will take a 5 to 10 minute break just to establish quorum for the annual general meeting, and we'll reconvene here shortly. Also, for those of you that might be on YouTube, the annual general meeting will not be broadcasted on YouTube. So if you're planning on joining, please make yourself available back on Zoom, inshallah. With that, we'll be back shortly.